BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In today's episode, does the countryside code still work?
Well, I think it's a really good idea, but I'm not sure that it has any teeth.
Unfortunately, the general public don't know enough about it.
More on that later, but let's start with our topic for this week, pollinators. They come in many shapes and sizes, as we'll hear in a moment, but most of us still first think bees. Catherine and Chris Price grow a variety of fruits on their farm in Herefordshire, including cider apples, cherries, blueberries, raspberries and strawberries. In recent years, the couple have been increasing the bee population on the farm to improve yields, as Bob Huckenhall reports.
Listen carefully and you may be able to hear a swarm of honeybees busy pollinating the strawberries on Moor Court Farm in Herefordshire. More on them in a moment, but they're not the only bees who've been helping pollinate the crop this year, as farmer Catherine Price explains. So Catherine, we're next to a box. You've got about 40 of these and they've been imported from Holland, containing bees.
When we get the bees arrive on farm, we unbox them. So each beehive is in an individual cardboard container, and then we build the sides, which provides a ventilation into the beehive. Then within that, you've got a plastic inner, which is where you've got the worker bees. So depending on the size of the hive, you've got between 110 and 200 what they call worker bees. So these are bumblebees that come in and aid in the pollination. And so below them in the box, you can see here we've got a pollen reserve, really, or a nectar reserve. So it's a liquid with a wick that gives them that early boost of food should they arrive on farm and the crops not be in full blossom. It gives them a backup of feed to keep them going early on.
So what are the advantages of importing bees like this?
So we import them because we've got a number of tunnel crops here. So typically your honeybee, which is your standard beekeeper bee, doesn't like to fly in the cooler conditions. And obviously it's very difficult to predict in the spring the weather we're going to get. So we import some bumblebees that are happier to operate and pollinate in much cooler conditions. So they will go as low as 8 degrees, which in Herefordshire in April is still quite possible because you just don't know what weather we're going to get.
So how long have you been importing bees like this?
So we've been bringing bees in probably for about the last 8 years just to try and help with our pollination. And originally we were bringing them in to help with our cherries. And over the years we've diversified further into having strawberries and raspberries. So we bring in more of them.
So how have they performed this year so far?
Well, compared to last year, which was a particularly cold spring and wasn't great weather, the bees have been much better this year. And we've had a really good pollination across all our crops.
These bees do come from Holland. Does that cause any threats to our native bees here?
So the bees within these hives, they are actually UK native bees. So they are Bombus terrestrius. So they do fit in nicely within our sort of the wild bee population and don't cause any issues.
Away from the tunnel crops, Catherine's husband Chris is watching the honeybees at work.
The main peak is March, April, when a lot of our crops are in blossom. So a local beekeeper brings his hives in. So we have a peak of about 60 hives then, and he gradually removes them once our crops have finished pollinating.
And has the use of honeybees like this increased, would you say, in fruit growing industry in recent years?
I think it has. I think especially growing a fruit crop, you don't realise how important pollination is until you actually grow a fruit crop. And you see if you have poor pollination, you actually see the effect it does have on your yield.
And earlier I was talking with Catherine about the commercial bees that come in from Holland. Do they compete with the wild pollinators? Do they cause any problems in that way?
As far as I can see, I don't think they compete at all. I think they benefit each other. We find that the imported bees, the bumblebees, work better when it's cooler. So in a colder spring, the bumblebees come into effect, but then a warmer spring, the honeybees tend to do a very good job. So I think by using 2 types of bees or more, it helps to spread your risk for pollination.
Chris Price in Herefordshire. Bees are not, of course, the only pollinators. Paul Hetherington from the insect charity Buglife ran me through some of the others.
There's a whole raft of animals that carry out pollination. A lot of the flies, particularly things like hoverflies, a whole range of bees, bumblebees, solitary bees, and of course honeybees. And then you've got things like butterflies, you've got moths, you've got wasps, but also quite a number of beetles, the thick-legged flower beetle and the pollen beetle.
We're going to be talking about some of those later this week. How would you describe the current situation for pollinators here in the UK?
We're very concerned about the state of particularly our wild pollinators. There have been definitive declines in numbers over the last 20 odd years. We have a survey that measures total insect abundance, and it's shown a 63% fall in abundance since 2021. Now, this year's survey is still underway, and at the moment it is looking encouraging that things are slightly better than last year. And that's to be expected because of the way the weather's picked up. But this year's been particularly bad for solitary bees because, of course, last year was bad for them, so there were fewer eggs laid, so there were fewer to hatch. And they're one of our most important pollinators, particularly for things like fruit orchards.
Over the past number of years now, we've had a lot of farmers being paid by taxpayers to create more habitat for things like pollinators. Has that had any effect?
You would hope it's had some effect, but other things go against that happening. A lot of farmers are using chemicals on their fields, herbicides in particular, and that is taking away a lot of the forage that's available. Also, of course, pesticides, which can impact on our wild pollinators. And, of course, also the bringing in of too many honeybee hives can also have a very detrimental effect. You need to create around 10 hectares of pollen-rich habitat for every hive of honeybees you bring in. Otherwise, what they will be doing is taking away from what's available for the wild.
We heard just now a company which actually imports their own bumblebees in this case to work in polytunnels. Is that one of the solutions to the problems we've faced?
I know this is something that's been done quite a lot, but again, it's in polytunnels because the problem is you're bringing in pollinators from overseas. They could well be carrying diseases that could wreak havoc, really, amongst our wild populations in the UK. And I know that the rules say that when you bring them in, you're not supposed to let them out of your greenhouse, your polytunnel. How they manage to achieve that, I'm not sure.
What do we need to do to try and make life easier for pollinators?
We need to do all we can to reverse the damage we've done. So we need to create more connectivity. This is the biggest problem. You've lost loads and loads of habitat, but what habitat you've got is so fragmented that you can't get between areas of good habitat. So then if something catastrophic happens, you're going to lose everything in the area. So we've developed a system called beelines, which are, if you like, pollinator superhighways. And that's what we need to do. We need to start getting that connectivity back so that pollinators can travel between places.
Paul Hetherington there from Buglife. Now, remember this?
Oh, Joe, I have enjoyed our country walk.
Yes, we've come a long way, Petunia. Look, you can see our tracks right across that yellow cornfield.
Oh, yes. It's ever so nice in this field, but I'm glad those cows have gone.
Ah, they're taking themselves off for a walk down the road. Look.
That's a 1971 campaign to advertise the Countryside Code. Originally launched in 1951, it aimed to teach visitors how to treat rural areas and was widely advertised.
You know, there's a farmer down there with a purple face.
I don't think he looks very friendly.
Ah, maybe you're right. Though it can't be anything we've done.
No. But I won't stay where I'm not wanted. Come on, Joe.
When folk come out to the country, why oh why won't they follow the country code?
The code was relaunched in 2021 with updated guidance and a slogan, Respect, Protect, Enjoy. There were adverts and a partnership with Shaun the Sheep and Aardman Animations.
The thing I enjoy about the countryside the most is the peace, quietness, space, fresh air, the scenery. It's really beautiful.
On footpaths, I think everyone will have stepped in dog muck at one time. Yeah. It's just horrible.
Disgusting.
Horrible.
We've got to be responsible pet owners.
See, people don't realise that dogs could be a danger to wildlife. There's sheep running around scared, there's birds nesting on the ground, havoc. Keep them on a lead.
Well, after a bank holiday weekend when many of us were out in the countryside, how is the code working now? A new stakeholder survey has been launched by Natural England and Natural Resources Wales to find out. And just to say, this is just England and Wales. The code in Northern Ireland is similar but run separately. And in Scotland, access rules are different. And there they have the Scottish Outdoor Access Code. Right, back to the Countryside Code in England and Wales. We asked a couple of stakeholders, farmers Charlotte Llewellyn, who farms 200 acres with beef and sheep right on the edge of Cardiff, and Richard Payne, who runs an arable farm of 700 acres and 4 footpaths in Somerset.
Well, I mean, I think it's a really good idea, but I'm not sure that it has any teeth, and it doesn't really put that much responsibility, I don't think, on either party. It's very good if you are both willing, but if you're not willing, it's meaningless.
Do you find that people don't respect the fact that they're walking in, as you say, your livelihood?
Well, many do. And I would like to say now that I think it's great that we have access to the countryside, because it's a shop front for us that we can show people what we do as farmers. Most people that use the footpaths will be very good and respectful, but we get some, and their dogs normally, which are not. And that can be a problem for cropping and for wildlife. And I frequently get told that, my dog's not doing any harm. And I say, well, how do you know? It's 200 yards away from you with its head in a hedge during nesting season. And we do get a certain amount of crop damage. We have about a mile of footpath on the River Tone, and it costs me about £2,000 a year in lost crop every year on average. I mean, you can see where people and dogs have been running through the corn and rolling down in it, and the yield absolutely plummets on that outside swath.
You sound sort of resigned to that.
Well, it's probably life experience, but I shouldn't have to accept that. No one seems to be interested when we have damage, because we have absolutely no recourse in law to, get recompense for crop damage, for physical damage to fences and stiles, what have you. And it all seems to be in favour of the walker. It would be just quite nice to have, a robust education about how to use footpaths and respect the countryside, and also some sort of redress that if things go wrong.
We've got this survey at the moment asking stakeholders what they think of the Countryside Code. What would you change if you had the power?
Well, I would certainly make the teaching of a Countryside Code compulsory in primary and secondary education, and not just play lip service to it.
The Countryside Code is good in some respects, but unfortunately the general public don't know enough about it. There needs to be a great deal more education. Everybody assumes that farmland is a playground, and that's a very dangerous assumption. For me as a farmer, for them, and for my livestock.
You're surrounded by people where you farm. What is their attitude when they come onto your land?
For those that have lived in the area for a while, generally great. I get to say hello, I get to speak to them, and it's brilliant. For those people that have not been in the area long, it can be extremely difficult. It ranges from accepting what you're saying, accepting that there are dangers, that they need to be careful, that they need to be aware of the Countryside Code, keep to the footpath, keep their dog on a lead, don't leave litter. But some, if you try and tell them, are abusive, and that's very hard to cope with.
How do you think the Countryside Code could be used to improve things?
I think that it should be part of the curriculum in schools. I think we need to teach young people about how to behave in the countryside, understanding that you're actually walking in a living environment, that you aren't the only people that are there.
In the past, we have had advertising campaigns about the code, most recently with the Aardman Animations one. Would you like to see more of that?
I think anything that grabs the attention, that makes people aware, is good. It needs to be more than that, though. I think it needs to be, as I said, part of the school curriculum. They need to understand that this affects people's livelihoods.
Farmers Charlotte Llewellyn and Richard Payne. That online survey runs until September the 12th. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.